Hold on. Bam, and we're live, bitches. Okay, so welcome to my show. This is episode 4, where Jason and I will give our version of the Star Wars Eulogy. So,
rest in peace, Star Wars.
This is a tribute to a dear departed friend of ours who has been with us side by side throughout our childhoods and our formative years and our adolescence. So, Jason, to begin, I'll let you have the floor here. Tell me about your initial fandom of Star Wars as a kid growing up and what, Tell me about your own personal relationship with Star Wars.
Show us on the Wookiee doll where Kathleen Kennedy hurt you. Again, I'm a child. I was born in 80, like you were.
Mm-hmm.
I came into it with Return of the Jedi, which I loved. I had all the toys. I literally had the little pewter figurines.
Mm-hmm.
I still have the AT-AT toy. I used to have I had the Millennium Falcon. I even had the whole indoor play set, right? Like, these were the only thing that surpassed this in my mind was when I discovered comics and I got into Spider-Man. Like, that was it. Like, that was it. Now, don't get me wrong. When I got older, right? Yeah, I'm a big fan of hard sci-fi, so I'm a Babylon 5er at heart. But I have room in my heart for Star Wars and Star Trek. It's a big enough heart for everything. But yeah.
Would you say you were most obsessed with Star Wars as a little kid, or when you were like maybe older as a
little kid?
Preteen? Okay.
Little kid. But that being said, it's not like I ever stopped really appreciating or loving it. I love the comics. Like, when Dark Horse got the rights to do I think that was some of the best Star Wars ever done. Was what Dark Horse was doing in the 90s, where they were telling.
What was that famous graphic novel? Oh shoot!
Honestly, there were a lot of them.
No, there was one that was iconic though. The World Devastator.
Yeah.
Which one was that? Which one? Which
I
one
cannot
was that?
remember that. Oh,
that's when the Emperor came back.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. My favorite comic. There was one comic that they had. It was just a single episode. I mean, it played part of a larger story, right? But it was Han Solo and Leia and Chewie. Leia was pregnant, and they were looking for this one Jedi master that had survived. Again, back before, apparently, Order 66 didn't kill any. It killed like 3 Jedis, as near as I can tell. We'll get into that here in a second. But there was this one other master who was hiding on some massive, sort of complex city, orbital city kind of a thing. And it was right after the fall of the Empire. But you still had the Empire, remnants around doing things. It was just such a great comic. It told such a good story. There's a scene where Chewie sits down at a bar, and the bartender he says, "I don't growl your language, but here, everyone, all Wookiees like this food." But there's another Wookiee there, and they get to talking, and he gets the information he needs there. It was just such a well done, well thought out comic. But yeah, I mean, in that, the only other thing I loved more than the comics were the Rogue Squadron video games that were coming out from like the late 90s, early 2000s. Loved those things. Like, you just got to be in your whatever ship you wanted, and you were just flying around, blowing stuff out of the sky. It was beautiful. It was peak Star Wars.
My favorite Star Wars game of all time was TIE Fighter.
Yeah.
That was good. That was when I was in my height of my obsession with like space operas, especially because I was always into Star Wars because of the ships.
Right.
I thought X-Wings were cool. I thought TIE Fighters were cool.
Yep.
I liked,
TIE Interceptor is my favorite ship.
Every ship had its own, like, you got into the ships as like the same way you would get into like studying about an actual navy.
Yeah.
Like all the different classes of Star Destroyers and the Corellian corvettes. Man, I love those ships. Those Mon Calamari cruisers.
Oh yeah. Oh yes. So I, to this day, not kidding, when I'm working or if I'm doing something else but I need background noise, I will listen to podcasts about Star Wars or Star Trek or other sci-fi fandoms ships, and like the history of there's one that'll even go into the history of the Corellian corporation that builds all of those ships in Star Wars, as well as the other, the Kuat Drive fields and all that. My love for that stuff is essentially the sci-fi version of my father's love of again, my dad was a Vietnam vet, but he loved World War II. So we had all the old Jane's books on tanks and the ships and the air and the aircraft from World War II and before. So my love for that comes from there. But again, like you said, the thing about Star Wars is you fall in love with the ships so easily, so quickly. So I think my love of listening to those things comes from this fact, from this weird amalgamation of my father's love of World War II, particularly the equipment, right, and airplanes and tanks and all that, and having that, but then also falling in love with these Star Wars and but specifically Star Wars ships.
You like the ships. Me too.
Yeah,
that's why we were both into Wing Commander.
Yes. Oh, dude. Oh, dude.
Wing Commander.
My favorite. I'm sorry. Those the first the sort of Mickey Mouse Kilrathi ships from that first one. Those are still my favorite things. It's still one of my favorite designs of all time.
Because it was remember
like a TIE fighter, really.
Remember in Wing Commander 2 when Jazz betrays you, and you're like, Jazz, you son of a bitch! I trusted you.
I am still pissed at Jazz. That
motherfucker, Jazz. How could you sell us out to aliens, man? You betrayed your own humanity, you son of a bitch.
I know.
That guy was a twat. He had to go.
And he went.
You know what I loved about Wing Commander is like when the ship explodes, you see the look on their face on the
they're like,
they're like, no. And let me send this one transmission to this guy right as I die, just so he can take pleasure in the sight of my death.
Yes.
I love those. See,
love that.
I thought because Wing Commander and TIE Fighter were both out, right? Yeah. And I thought I liked TIE Fighter because I felt like it was a more complex game and had more variety of ships. And it was cool because they all kind of functioned the way they ought to function in like the Star Wars universe. And they had a lot more ships. And I'd say gameplay wise, TIE Fighter was better, but Wing Commander had so much more personality.
Oh, it absolutely did.
Especially the way the music kicks up when the ship gets destroyed.
Yes.
Or like, you know what my favorite part about Wing Commander is? Like when you're going up against a capital ship and that torpedo reticle goes real slow and you're like, oh god, just lock on. And meanwhile you're taking
like, just lock on, for crying out loud. It would take forever. But and like you said, it had a lot more personality. The characters, the main love interest, Devro, right? That was Angel, right?
Yeah.
Was that her call sign? Yeah. Like, I'm sorry, like it was great art. The characters had a lot of personality, and like you said, there was, I love the fact you even had training sims within the game.
Yeah,
where it's like you want to get into, and it's like it was a completely different ship, but you could fly it. It kind of
also
helped,
It was the first game that like it came out right when Sound Blaster came out. Remember that thing? Because prior to Sound Blaster, all the sounds on your PC was just like the PC speaker, which was crap.
Yeah.
But then you get the Sound Blaster, and finally you put in a sound card. There's actual music in these games?
Yes. Whole new world.
Yeah, you remember Sound Blaster?
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely, I do. Top line VGA graphics, you get the Sound Blaster going. Dude, it was nuts. It was a nuts time because, and I think a lot of people who, let's be honest, we probably don't have any young people watching this show, but
we got some older people too, though.
Yeah, no, we do have some older people, but those of us who were there in the late 80s, we were, because we were born in late 70s, early 80s. We were old enough to see how much was changing and how rapidly it changed. Like, people have talked about how we're never going to have this sort of dramatic change in graphics, like when we went from VGA and 8-bit to eventually the 64 bit system.
You have to
You're never
consider
going to see that.
you have to consider we are at the age where the first half of our lives was without the internet, and the latter half was with the internet. So we got to see the transition firsthand.
Oh, chat rooms.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got to see all of it. And, you know, we remember things like Oregon Trail.
Yeah.
So it's, you know, we were there. It's like we're never going to see that sort of transition again. But the simple fact of the matter is we were there, and these games were again, the flight games were amazing because it was the easiest thing to do outside of a side scroller.
Yeah.
For them to, you know, and it looked good, and it was active. But yeah, like TIE Fighter, like you're right, TIE Fighter was in many ways a more fun game, but Wing Commander was way more compelling a game.
Yeah, it was more dramatic. It had more pizzazz.
Yep.
But that being said, I did like me some TIE Fighter. Oh boy,
yeah.
especially since because the TIE Fighter itself is really crappy. By the way, for people who don't know, the reason why they're called TIE Fighter is because it stands for Twin Ion Engine.
Yep. Oh, yesterday at work, I was chatting with one of my friends, and they're like, "So what do you listen to?" I'm like, "Well, I usually like, you know, news and current events." She's like, "Oh, I can't listen to that." And I'm like, "But when I'm in, you know, I talk about, I listen to these other sci-fi things, you know, talking about my love of the ships, right?" I'm like, right now, I just got done listening to a conversation about why certain Federation ships have 4 nacelles instead of 2 nacelles, as is the common. Like, what's the advantage of it? Why would they have 4 versus 2? And she's like, I have no idea what you just said. It's like, no, like, you're better off. Just understand, no one's ever gonna out nerd me unless you live in a basement and are literally covered in Cheeto dust. You're not gonna out nerd me ever. So, like, it's like, yeah, the fact that Donnie and I know what TIE stands for should not surprise anyone.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, you don't have to tell me what TIE stands for. I've known since I was a kid what that means.
I got into Star Wars. Like, okay, I watched them as a little kid, but when I saw them, I was so young that I barely remembered them. But then I got into Dungeons and Dragons when I was like an early teenager, and then all my friends were really into Star Wars. So when I was like 14, 15, that's when I started going back and watching the movies and actually getting it. And then from that point on, I got real hooked into Star Wars. And then, you know, around that time, TIE Fighter comes out.
Right. I get you.
And then the novels, Heir to the Empire. I remember my favorite one was Truce at Bakura, which takes place immediately after you know, like how in Return of the Jedi it ends with that party.
Right.
Truce at Bakura takes place like immediately at the end of that party. There's some shit going down in this other like rebel, I guess this friendly planet, and it's this straight up new alien race that's out to just conquer shit. And then the Empire has to fight them, the remnants, because you know they just killed the emperor. Doesn't mean the Empire's gone.
No,
because you know there's still that Grand Admiral Thrawn about to come into the scene and fuck shit up. Man, those were some good books. Heir to the Empire.
That's actually that remind me to come back on that when we start talking about Kathleen Kennedy, because that's a pet peeve of mine.
Yeah,
is what she did with the books and the other, and which anyway we'll come back to that. But yeah, no, I cannot remember the name of the ships or the name of the alien race, but there was that big bad threat. Like you said, Thrawn plays a big part of it, but they literally come from outside the galaxy.
Yeah,
and they're like the big bad. And a lot of the premise was, hey, Palpatine knew these things were coming, and that's why he was actually designing the Empire to be the way it is. Because a lot of people said, look, the Empire's ships, their military tactics don't make a lot of sense with the Rebel Alliance, right? And his whole point was, it's because he was literally stacking, again, as a Force user, as a Sith Lord, he knew these things were coming because he could see them. And his tactics and the weapon, the Tarkin doctrine, which is what the entire Empire was based on militarily, was designed to fight those things, not the rebels at all. In fact, the entire reason the rebels could win was because the Empire was designed to fight these massive this massive military invasion. It was not designed to go after smaller insurgents.
Yeah, because you start asking yourself, why are the rebel ships all better than the Empire ships, like the X-wing and the Y-wing and the A-wing?
Yeah.
As you're playing the game, you realize, like, because you fly both of them, and you're like, man, these X-wings seriously outperform these TIE fighters. I thought the Empire had more resources, but then they introduced the TIE Interceptor, and then the TIE Advanced, and then finally they bust out, oh, you want to see what we could do? And then they bust out the TIE Defender.
Yeah.
That just tears up these X-wing fighters. And you're like, oh.
I have to say, my favorite one, though, is the Interceptor. That is still my favorite ship. And I one of my great disappointments with the newer Star Wars is they went back to the old sort of TIE fighter instead of like Rebels has what they call the TIE, the TIE Advance, which is where they had the curved wings, the curved nacelles sort of things. So it's still a TIE fighter, but it's got the blades are curved. I'm like, why not just use that? You're trying to show some difference. Why are you using or make them look like the Interceptors? Why are you going with the old Mickey Mouse look? Like, but we'll get into that rant later. But yeah, like you said, the TIE Interceptor, TIE Defender, these are some sexy looking ships. But a lot of one of the things about the Tarkin Doctrine was it was about creating mass produced, massive military formations where it's like you could have $1 million fighter, or you could have 10 $100,000 fighters, right? And the Tarkin Doctrine is you got one ship with one pilot, or you could have 10 pilots with 10 ships. Yeah, you may lose a few because they're not going to be as well armored, they're not going to be as well shielded, but they're going to be able to deliver way more firepower to the field, which is what you're going to need going up against these things that are coming. And so when you put them up against your X-wing, which is essentially hand built, because they're stunt fighters that were upgraded, right, with bigger shields, stronger shields, hyperdrives. In a lot of ways,
they had shields. Those TIE fighters didn't even have any goddamn shields. It was like one hit and you were dead.
Oh yeah, exactly. It's like you were very much. And again, think about it, like the X-wings and the A-wings and the B-wings. They all have actual internal they have internal life support.
They had hyperdrives.
The TIE fighters, they had hyperdrives.
Yeah.
The a TIE fighter pilot, he's in an environmental suit. Those cockpits are not there's no, it's not just there's no hyperdrive, there's no atmosphere. They are as cheaply built as possible.
TIE fighters are essentially just guns strapped to an engine.
Yeah.
That's all they are.
But they do move. They absolutely move. And that's the other thing. They can deliver a lot of firepower, which was the idea. Is you had these swarms and they would blast at you, and you just walked. You were essentially flying into a wall of laser bolts. That's what you were doing. And that was the idea. So when you have these smaller, not really faster or more maneuverable, but these better armored ships in small tactical events, they were more effective at what they were doing. But if you look at it again militarily, even just judging by the movies, right? Just the movies. Again, I think we get a skewed perspective playing the games because, again, the game is designed for you to win. If we watch the movies, those TIE fighters don't do as badly as we think they do because of how maneuverable they are and how fast they are. Again, forget the Disney era. Just like the original 3 movies, the Rebels get their butts basically handed to them almost every time. From a military
the Empire's
perspective.
Always had better capital ships.
Well, yeah, but the TIE fighters, again, the TIE fighters are not having as hard a time taking out those Y-wings and some of the X-wings in that first movie. Like, think about how many ships go in and how many don't come out.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you're right. Like, don't get me wrong. They've always had better capital ships, and it's not like the Death Star's defenses were that small. But the Death Star was designed to be protected from ships by their capital ships. Like that was always the idea. Is the TIE fighters were supposed to keep everything off of, the smaller craft off of the Death Star, and then the light turbo lasers that they have was sort of a backup. That's all they were supposed to be. So, but again, it's easy to get a skewed perspective on the TIE fighters from the video games because they were designed for you to win. You watch the original trilogy, and it's kind of clear the TIE fighters are not necessarily as weakly built as we think, because they seem to be pretty capable at taking care of rebels. Again, the kill ratio is definitely more towards the TIE fighter side as far as the amount dying, but they're no slouches either. And think about it, or not Endor, the Battle of Hoth. Okay, Battle of Hoth, the rebels they're in an entrenched, fortified position, and as soon as the Empire shows up, what do? They get out of Dodge as fast as they can. There is no hesitation. They're like, nope, we need to go. We need to go now. They had a planetary mounted and charged ion cannon, and they still were like, nope, we can't win this fight. Every time there's a military and they have to engage the Empire militarily, they lose. The only time they win is because of subterfuge and essentially ambushes.
Yeah. By the way, for
again, the TIE fighter is not I'm just saying, TIE fighter is not as bad a ship as we tend to think it is.
And for the folks listening at home, the ion cannons are meant to disable ships. They're not meant to destroy them. They're primarily used in capture missions.
Yep. But again, if you disable a ship, you disable a Star Destroyer, it should be easy pickings. But they never even bother to try. They're like, nope, we gotta go.
They still bounce. They're like, yep, we bouncing.
Yeah, they're like, nope, we're gone. This whole thing is gone. Like in all three films, they lose every military engagement except for the fight at Endor, but that's only because they were able to ambush them, the people on Endor, because of the Ewoks, who are cannibals and apparently a lot smarter than people give them credit for, terrifyingly so, and Luke Skywalker. If they had actually, if the Emperor had kept his hands out of the military stuff and just let Tarkin run it originally, again, Tarkin dies on the first Death Star, but if he had just let Tarkin run it, they probably could have put down the entire Rebel Alliance. And even if he's like, fine, we don't have Tarkin, I'll go ahead and use we just talked about him, blue skinned, red eyes.
Grand Admiral Thrawn.
Yeah, Grand Admiral Thrawn. If they had just let Thrawn run everything, they would have taken out the Rebel Alliance. The problem was Palpatine loved these big, grand events, right? Like he wants to wipe out the rebels in one move at Endor, right?
Let me ask you this question, Jason. Do you remember where you were when you saw for the very first time the trailer for Episode 1, Phantom Menace?
I don't know that I remember exactly where I was, but I do remember seeing it for the first time and just thinking about how excited I was to see it.
I must have watched that trailer over and over again. I was so excited.
Oh, I remember exactly where I was because we were there opening night. We got there 3 hours early because everyone's like, you're going to have to get there 3 hours early. I had already bought the art book for it. I think I still have it around here somewhere.
So you were getting ready for that movie to come out.
Oh, I was ready for it. Oh, dude, I was beyond ready for it. I was in 3PO without the external armor, the pod racing. I'm like,
you dressed up?
I don't cosplay.
Okay.
I have a very well defined lines around my geekdom that keep me out of the basement. So but no,
you saw it opening night.
Oh, I saw it opening night. I was there. Like I saw it opening night. Yeah. No, my friends were there. I was, like I said, I had already bought a bunch of like the art stuff for it because
I never seen a theater that crowded before.
The only time I was more excited, or I was as excited to see that movie, was when I went to go see Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles for the first time.
Okay, so
And Batman, the original Batman.
You watched the movie. You walk out of the theater. What are your thoughts?
I was sadly disappointed.
You were disappointed
with
the whole thing.
It's not Jar Jar Binks.
Yeah.
I mean, now, don't get me wrong. I still like the movie. I really do. And I'm sorry. The Battle of Fates at the end between Darth Maul and Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon. I love that. Again, I do actually like the prequels more than I'm supposed to. But I mean, I like the ship designs. I liked the Nemoidians. Jar Jar was a low point. I think there were some things about it I wasn't a big fan of, but I liked the movie overall. Like it didn't recapture seeing Jedi for the first time or anything like that, but it was fun. I liked it. I enjoyed it. Like I felt there were some areas that were hit or miss, but
I enjoyed overall, parts of it. There were some parts that I liked and some parts that I didn't. Well, similar to what you said, the Battle of the Fates.
Yeah. The Nubian cruiser was one of my favorite ships from that entire thing.
I did like the sea monster part.
Yeah. Always a bigger fish.
Yeah, I like that. It was cool seeing Coruscant for the first time.
Yep.
I did geek out when you caught the glimpse of ET in the Senate. I did geek out pretty hard. Wasn't a fan of the kid playing Anakin. Was not a fan.
I did not like that I've always thought that they essentially it should have been Anakin Skywalker and Qui-Gon. Or it should have been reversed. It should have been Anakin and Obi-Wan going in instead of Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon. I know the idea is we have to find Anakin. Well, the problem is they do change so much, and this is all on Disney hasn't bought them yet, so this is all on George Lucas. The problem is the way it's set up in the original films. You feel like Anakin was already a fighter pilot when Obi-Wan finds him. Like he was already at least an older teenager. Like you have that feeling where it's like, he was already a great pilot when I found him. Well, now, but when you found him, he's 10. Like, what the hell is that?
Yeah, they should have made him older.
Yeah, there's no reason. I know
there was no reason to make him that young.
Yeah, and particularly when you throw the whole, the prince, Amidala into this, it's like that just makes it creepy. Like at least if he was 14 or 15 and she was older,
at least make him the same age.
Yeah, make him the same age, or again, make him 14 or 15. So it's like, okay, it's a 3
No, they should have just started with Hayden Christensen. Is what they should have done.
No, I agree. That's what I'm saying. It should have been. He should have been I think they should have started with him being a Jedi. There was no reason to do all that with Tatooine. But fine, you want to do that? That's fine. Again, there were some hit or miss. There were some misses in that movie that keep it from being my favorite of the trilogy. But I still liked the movie overall. It was still Star Wars. It was still good. The ships were amazing. I love the Blockade Runner. I've always loved the Blockade Runner. I love the earlier version of it. Again, the Nubian cruiser that they escape in. I love that ship because it's just the SR-71 Blackbird without the tail fins. But the Nubian fighter was always my favorite fighter. I love the Nubian fighter. Particularly in Rogue, when you finally got a chance to get it in Rogue One. Like that was... I love that.
Do you know when Star Wars died for me personally? Was in Episode 2, Attack of the Clones.
Really?
Because I saw that movie and I was like, yo, this sucks. And but here's the thing. Right around that time, the first Lord of the Rings comes out.
Oh, I get it.
So I was at peak Lord of the Rings fandom at that point. I had read the books and everything.
Of course.
And I had just watched, and then you compare the first Fellowship with Attack of the Clones. It's pretty clear. It's pretty clear to see. It's like, I thought Attack of the Clones sucked. I thought Hayden Christensen's acting was garbage. I thought some of the lines of dialogue were cringe. The whole thing with Boba Fett, that kid, I was like, hey, kid, maybe take some acting classes.
That was rough. See, I liked Attack of the Clones better than the first one, though. But you're right. It's like the prequel trilogy does not hold up against the original trilogy. I will say this though: go back and rewatch A New Hope, and the dialogue's pretty hokey.
See, I like the third one better though.
Yeah, the third one's good. The third one's solid.
Third one's kind of solid.
The third one should have been the second episode. Revenge of the Sith should have been the second film. It essentially should have started off in the Clone Wars. Like this is my thought. Episode 1, the blockade of Naboo should have been part of the Clone Wars. Anakin should have already been a Jedi. Essentially, Revenge of the Sith is episode 2, and then episode 3 is essentially Obi-Wan just like that's the complete fall of the Jedi. But he needed to become Darth Vader in episode 2, and then episode 3, we're seeing things get falling off because the Force has cursed him. He's getting things cut off and replaced because of how long and hard he's fighting the Jedi. Order 66 should have occurred at the end of episode 2, and it's like, look, yeah, the clones got a number of the Jedi, but like the Jedi is like the Jedi are the freaking Jedi. These stormtroopers were not taking them out in mass, and that's why. Oh, and then Vader is in episode 3 is him going out hunting down the Jedi and killing them, and then eventually you have the battle on Mustafar where Obi-Wan just jacks him up. But it needed to be like he was already mostly robotic by the time he gets there, and then Obi-Wan's like, "Hey, you know what sounds like a good idea? Lava." But yeah, the problem is they waited too long for that event. So yeah, again, if Lucasfilms had come to me and say, "Hey, Jason, how should we do this?" I'm like, start them off early, or start them off. Just start with the Clone Wars. We don't need it. Like you can mention his backstory on Tatooine. You can show him being manipulated by Palpatine early in the first movie. Right? Show that he's a hero to everyone. Show that Anakin Skywalker is no slouch. All in the first movie, but then also see how he's being manipulated by the Emperor and why.
Do you know what my thoughts were after watching the prequel trilogy?
Okay.
I started to realize that, George Lucas just kind of bit off Akira Kurosawa in the first trilogy. In this trilogy, he doesn't have that shit to go off of.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, no.
He clearly didn't have a plan. He had an outline, but he didn't have a concrete plan.
Yeah. Oh no, I flat out said, and you and I are not the only people who've mentioned this. I think even The Simpsons did a skit on this. George Lucas is only good if he can copy someone else. Like, so this is the thing. Spielberg was the great from that generation, was the great director, but George Lucas was the great producer. George Lucas knows how to find talent and make the talent do what it needs to do. He knows how to create, like he created ILM. Almost everything we see today comes from something ILM did.
Mm-hmm.
It like just straight up. The man is an amazing producer. He's not an amazing. The problem is he was writing and directing, and he had too much creative control. He should have, from day one, said, "I need to get these people together. Y'all tell this story." That's what he needed to do. But he let his ego get in the way. But for me, it wasn't dead until Disney bought it.
So I started caring a lot less for Star Wars after the end of the prequel trilogy, but it did get, my love for Star Wars did get rekindled a bit with Knights of the Old Republic.
The video game?
I love that. I love those games. KOTOR.
What about the Clone Wars television show?
See, here's the thing. I never saw it.
So it's worth. Okay, Clone Wars. As far as I'm concerned, Clone Wars, the television series, completely makes up. And maybe it's because I have that in my head. It completely makes up for the first 2 episodes of the prequel. As far as people say, well, how should I watch Star Wars? I say you need to watch episode 4, 5, then jump back, watch the Clone Wars, and then watch episode 3. then watch episode 6.
After the prequel trilogy, you actually still liked Star Wars.
Yeah, I was still on board with Star Wars.
It hadn't died for you yet.
It hadn't died for me yet. And here's the thing, it hadn't died for me. Even after I saw The Force Awakens, I was not happy with Force Awakens, but there was enough where I'm like, okay, let's see what they do with the second one. The second one is exactly where I'm like, no, I'm done. This is not.
That's where Star Wars died for you.
Officially. Yeah.
Last Jedi.
Here's the worst part of it. Last Jedi is both one of my favorite Star Wars films. It's also what I consider to be the worst Star Wars film.
Why is it one of your favorites?
The A plot, which is Rey and Kylo Ren, is some of the in the scene at the end where she's being tested by him, and he's like, "You're not," and he's like, "Your parents were junk dealers. You were, essentially they were space meth heads who left you with Unkar plot because they sold you into slavery because they wanted better space meth." Right? It's like, it was such a good idea that they were playing with this concept, and how they did the A plot was I hate using this term, but it was a subversion of expectation, and it was done perfectly. That's why it's one of my favorite Star Wars films, is the A plot. The reason I think it's the worst Star Wars film ever made is because of the B plot. And I hate the movie because of the B plot.
Which part of the B plot did you hate the most?
Everything that's not Rey and Kylo. Literally all of it. Because do you want me to go off on this rant? Because I'm about to get real nerdy real fast. Before we get to the politics about Holdo, and again, when we get to Holdo, that'll go into why.
Which one's Holdo again?
That's Laura Dern's character with the purple hair.
Oh, with the purple hair? Okay, yeah.
We're going to hold off on that because when I get to her, that's going to turn into Kathleen Kennedy. The reason the B plot is the worst thing that has ever happened in Star Wars is it does absolutely nothing to move any character forward at all. It doesn't move any plot forward. It doesn't do anything, and none of it makes friggin' sense. The movie starts off with the idea that it's like maybe a week later, like they blew up Starkiller Base, and it's like a week later, and they're having to bug out because the bad guys are showing up with ships they weren't supposed to have. The entire premise of the first the Force Awakens was that the revived Republic was not taking the First Order seriously because they weren't a threat. They had one ship. That was the point, is that they were essentially this small insurgent force. They weren't giving them any concern. That's why Starkiller Base was so important. Was because that's why they were the resistance, was because the Republic wasn't funding the resistance, because they're like, why should we waste time and money on people who are losers? Like, this is not a threat. They were not, the First Order was not considered a threat. And so you get to the second movie. Now they've got all kinds of ships showing up, including it wasn't a destroyer. What was the big one that Poe went after? It was I just forgot the word. It's not a destroyer. It is a.
Yo, remember those, Jason's quick aside. Remember those goddamn stupid ass bombers? The dumbest ships in all of fucking Star Wars.
Trust me. I am getting there. That is like, trust me. Whatever the ship is that shows up, the massive one. I can't. It's not the name of it. It's the class that it is. But anyway,
I've never seen a dumber spaceship in my life, man.
Trust me. That's my rant on that's about to happen. But here's the thing: they show up. It shows that this craft has the ability to hit anything at once and destroy anything at once, which is why Poe goes after it. Right? The bombers are the worst, like you said, they are the worst ship ever to be designed in any science fiction at all, period. I don't care what you put out there, because there's zero excuse for those bombers. They're slow. Like, where the hell are the Y-wings? You get the Y, like, Poe wipes the floor with all of in this amazing.
No, you know what?
scene.
You know what drove me absolutely fucking nuts was like, hey, why are you dropping bombs on these ships? You know you're in fucking space, right?
In space! These are gravity bombs in space! What the hell?
That made no sense. That made no sense.
Wipes out all the turbo lasers, and you send these, and they're all like together. So if one has a problem, they all blow up. Like this is World War freaking II, and they're dropping gravity bombs in space. What the hell? And here's the worst part of all of it.
Yeah.
If Poe had followed okay. So Poe gets reamed out because she's like, we could have jumped, we could have still had those bombers, and blah, 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 blah. He's getting reamed out by everybody for doing the plan that General Leia Ortega or whatever, Leia Solo, whatever, that she told him to do. Like that whole thing, Poe was not in charge of. It was Leia, right? So that formation that the ships were, all of it. Here's the thing: if Poe doesn't take out that ship, the whatever class it is, he calls it a fleet killer. Okay. If he doesn't take it out, then what we know immediately is when they make the jump to hyperspace, right? And they can be followed, because originally you couldn't track somebody through hyperspace. That was always the get out of jail free cards. If you can jump to hyperspace, they can't follow you. Well, guess what? We learn suddenly the Empire now has hyperspace tracking. If they had listened, if he had followed orders and listened to Leia, that movie is over. Because all that happens is that world-ending ship shows up and blasts them out of the sky. The entire idea is that they've run out of fuel, but they're able to stay far enough away from the other destroyers that they can't go in direct combat, and therefore they can survive. If that ship had showed up, he could have wiped every single one of those cruisers out of the sky immediately. That movie is over if Poe Dameron doesn't do what he did, even including those stupid ass bombers. And he spends the entire film being yelled at by everyone because he's being too reckless. Why aren't you following orders? You need to think of the bigger picture. He's the only one who's thinking about the bigger picture. And then Finn, and again, I'm going to come back to Holdo in a second, but I want to talk about how Finn was the most wasted character in that film. He is set up. J.J. Abrams, the reason I had so much hope for this second movie was that J.J. Abrams had set up the entire idea of these new stormtroopers as child soldiers. Finn was not supposed to be the only one who rebelled. That was supposed to be the point, was that Finn saying, hey, these aren't like the stormtroopers from the original trilogy who signed up, right? In the original trilogy, the stormtroopers were all volunteer. They were space Nazis. They volunteered. They were setting up these new troopers to be child soldiers. They didn't have a choice. That was supposed to be, it was clear what he was doing, and they crammed it all into the third movie, which is a travesty against mankind. But the idea that Finn was supposed to lead this rebellion of stormtroopers, say, no, you've got a choice. You can, and instead they waste the whole friggin' B plot with Finn. Did you see The Mandalorian?
No, I stopped giving a fuck about Star Wars.
Okay,
well before
The Mandalorian is legitimately good. It is really
until it wasn't.
And well, hold on, we'll
I
talk
heard
about that
until it wasn't. Yeah,
no, it was still good. The people. Okay, so I'll talk. That's an interesting point to come back at the end. But there's this Bill Burr plays a former stormtrooper. He gets like 2 or 3 episodes, right? He has more character development in one 10-minute scene, or maybe even a 5-minute scene, than Finn got in 3 freaking movies. They did Finn so dirty in that series that it's unforgivable.
Speaking of doing people dirty, Jason.
Holdo?
Well, I would like to get your thoughts on what they did with Luke Skywalker.
Here's the thing. If you'd asked me, Jason, how do we bring back and do this new trilogy? Easy. You open with Luke Skywalker, his new apprentice, Rey, with Han and Chewie on the Millennium Falcon, going to the Outer Rim because they're looking for Luke's original Padawan, John Solo, son of Han and Leia, who's gone missing with his Padawan. They go obviously John still turns to the dark side. He still becomes what's his face with the mask and all that. But Luke is the hero. You could even kill Luke in the first movie. I wouldn't do it, but you could still have him. But that's the scene you need to have. I am not as frustrated with the idea that Luke would just go off and hide after such a monumental failure, because that's what every Jedi apparently ever does when they face something bad, is quick, go hide somewhere on some remote planet. So that's on brand for the Jedi. The problem is we never get the heroic Luke Skywalker until the end. I'm okay with how they end it. I really am. The problem is they made him lose faith in what he was doing. They made him. We never got a chance to see Luke be the ultimate Jedi that he was supposed to become.
Yeah.
Right. That was my problem. He was mishandled. The entire thing. Like, I don't like John killing
Han Solo?
Han Solo in the first movie, I was okay with. I'm like, oh, okay, I see what you're doing here.
Oh, you're raising some stakes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like, this is, again, there was such emotional pathos. Like, one of my favorite things was someone did a sort of like a little comic strip of what happens in Chewie's head the moment he sees John kill Han Solo, and it's every flashback of him helping raise that kid. To Chewie, John is his nephew. He is his godson. He loves that kid.
Mm-hmm.
He is heartbroken that he's just as Han is, that this kid's turned to the dark side and started following Snoke. And that I don't even want to get on that whole trash storyline. But then to watch his godson murder his best friend, is there's such emotional pathos there that it's. Again, the movies don't do these ideas justice. Like, there's some really great ideas here, and they can, like, why would John betray everyone? Like, there were some really solid ideas here that they never fully explore.
My interest in the new Disney trilogy evaporated the moment I saw the very first shot of the very first trailer. Remember, it was John Boyega ripping off that stormtrooper helmet.
Yeah.
And then it's just his face, and then, ba-da, surprise, it's a black guy. And people were talking about it. Remember that? People were talking about it. See, now, for me, it wasn't the fact that he was black that I had the issue with. It was the fact that, hey, I thought we were fucking done with stormtroopers. Why is there still a stormtrooper? I thought we were done with stormtroopers. I thought the whole fucking point of the original trilogy was to stop the Empire. Okay, we're done. Yes. The New Republic is here. The Rebellion won, so we got a new government. We got a new society. And I was looking forward to seeing, okay, let's see what the galaxy looks like now that the Republic is back and doing their thing, and Han and Leia are elevated to, whatever status, and seeing Luke as the ultimate Jedi Master, probably running his own school. And rebuilding. Let's see what this is. Oh, wait, no, we're just going to repeat the events of episode fucking 4?
Yeah. What? Oh, no.
Is that what we're just going to rehash this whole fucking thing? They're back to being rebels, and the Empire a new version of it just came back. So, like, all those events of the previous trilogy were for nothing?
Didn't matter. Yeah, no, that is. Yeah, I'm right there with you. I'm right there with you on that, where it's like, well, then what the hell was the point of the original trilogy?
Oh, and we're back on a desert planet? Oh, and they're building their own fucked up version of their own Death Star?
Yep.
We're just rehashing the whole thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No,
so I didn't take those movies seriously at all. I was like, my first any expectation I had of those movies died when I saw that there were still stormtroopers. I was like, think of something new.
Yeah, there's so much more in this. So this gets into that's the whole point about Kathleen Kennedy. The initial complaint was that everyone is like, hey, why are we redoing this? Like you said, why are we doing this again? We've already done this story. And Kathleen Kennedy said, well, it's really hard when you're creating a new property. That was her excuse. And to which my favorite meme of all time is the one where it's Will Smith doing this, right? And it's literally boxes of the books. It's like, what do you mean you had nothing to build on? You had 30 plus years of extended universe material. You had the comics, you had the books, you had video games. People laid the foundation for how you could just pick the best stuff out of it, pay people off, although Disney's really bad about paying artists, and make the best story you possibly could.
You mean like what Marvel did? Like you mean like what Marvel did? They just took, okay, let's look at all of our comics.
1 through 3, yes.
Yeah. Yeah, up until it started getting crappy. She could have easily just taken any of that source material and just made it into a movie. It would have been dope.
Yeah.
But she couldn't, could she?
Nope. She had to cram her politics into it.
She had to cram her politics into it.
Which is where we get, again, like you said, I've got, like, John Boyega is the way they wasted Finn is, in my opinion, is the greatest crime of the original, of this new trilogy. Straight up. He's a great actor. You had a great character base, and you screwed that up. I want to use much stronger language on that, but you screwed it up entirely.
In my opinion, the greatest crime they ever did was in Rise of Skywalker, where actually that whole movie was the greatest crime.
The whole movie is a crime against humanity. The entire film.
That movie was a Holocaust.
We have to find. Here's this special knife that it's like, you mean to tell me they made a knife to show you how to get to one office on Endor? Why? Like, what sense does that make? What sense at all does any of that shit make? None of it's good.
You know, when the fucking Emperor showed up, when he showed up at that point, I was just like, yeah, sure, why not?
Yeah, no,
I might as well. Yeah.
Well, again, great. The worst line of any dialogue ever is, so the Emperor's returned somehow. Like, that's it. That's what you're gonna do. That's what you're gonna go with. Really? That's it. Someone comments like, hey, most people don't know this, but the ships that were built on Exegol were built by a group of Sith loyalists that have been hiding on Exegol for centuries. And someone replied, no. How could anyone possibly know that? They didn't mention the films. It wasn't mentioned until later in some other book. No one should know that. It's not obvious from the film at all. In fact, the film doesn't make obvious how any of this stuff works. It's so unbelievably stupid. All of it. So bad.
I like how they try to make, okay, it turns out Rey is a Palpatine, and then there's the big reveal. Rey's a Palpatine? I don't give a fuck. I'm done caring. Why should I continue to care?
Yeah. And it's like, well, they had to hide her on, really? That was the place you wanted to hide her, was with a junk dealer on Jakku. That's where the people who had all this access to all this stuff. He has a secret son. He had a secret son who had a secret family. What? The whole movie is a crime against humanity. Whole movie. There is no redeeming point of that movie at all. Also, another wasted character was Captain Phasma. She was supposed to be the new Boba Fett, and they screwed that story up so hard. It's like someone somewhere paid them to screw this up, and I can't imagine. I am willing to believe that somewhere is some dark evil person who's paying Disney to screw up this series. I swear to you, there's no other explanation.
Screw this up so bad. It's like
so badly
unscrew-upable. It should be
all of it. Well, and here's again, the problem is J.J. Abrams should have sat down and pinned out the whole. Like, he didn't have to write everything, but he said, "This is where you're going. These are the plot points that need to be addressed. Here's how the characters need to evolve." And then go and make Star Trek. That's all he had to do when he did the first movie. Because it's, again, they waste Finn in the second film. Rey is supposed to be learning from Luke. And again, there's probably really good explanation. Like, it is obvious that he knows who Rey is at the end of that film. When she's handing him the lightsaber, it's obvious that he knows who she is. It is clear that J.J. Abrams intended her to be a hidden Solo or something like that, not Palpatine. That is, or even if she was supposed to be Palpatine, they were supposed to know who it is. It is clear from that movie, everyone knew who she was.
Yeah.
And they weren't telling her. And it's just, he just needed to pen it as like, look, this is the story you need to tell. I'm gonna go make some pretty okay Star Wars films or Star Trek films. And instead, we got friggin' Holdo. Kathleen Kennedy. Because this is where we were going.
I was about to ask you. Give it to me on your thoughts on Kathleen Kennedy.
Who
is Kathleen Kennedy to you?
The Antichrist. She's probably the mother of the Antichrist. I am not kidding. She is. So here's the thing. She's been around forever. She was a part of Lucasfilm. She did good work. But as long as she wasn't actually in control of things, it was fine. You gave her the reins and she decided to get really political. The entire film, the entire second film is, and Holdo is the best example of why this is all failing. It's the woke stuff. Holdo is, I'm not kidding, this is canon, is a lesbian who either did have an affair or tried to have an affair with Leia. I can't remember which one it is, but she definitely came on to Leia. It was often some other book or comic or something, but they made her hair purple for the love of, I mean, it was just, it's the entire point of her character is to show how superior she is by degrading Poe Dameron for zero reason. We've already established Poe Dameron is the freaking hero of that film. If he doesn't do what he did, they're all dead but within 5 minutes of that scene ending. When they make that jump to hyperspace, if that super destroyer, whatever class it is, gets there, they're all toast. And she doesn't tell him what her plan is the entire time. There's zero reason for that. There's zero reason for her not to tell him what they're doing. The entire thing was she's like, I need to humble you, cis white male, because you're not as cool as I, the purple-haired lesbian. That is the entire point of Holdo. That's it. It's, yes, we know that you were a big fan. The fans love you because Poe Dameron's supposed to die in the first film. He was supposed to have that, but they loved him so much they kept him around, and they made him survive the movie. He was such a hit with the fans. They're like, well, we can't have another cis white male be the hero of Star Wars because people aren't really liking Rey and Finn as much as they should because you wrote them not nearly as well as you should have. I thought Rey was a great character. She was fine. Finn, I was really looking forward to Finn, but
I thought in the first movie, I thought Rey was fine. I had no issue with her. They
were fine. Yeah. They were, there's, again, you just undermined, but you didn't create good. You couldn't flesh out the characters enough, and that's your problem. But they're like, we don't like how Poe Dameron was so embraced by the fandom, so we need to find some way to humiliate him the entire film. And then to show that she's such a brilliant tactician, they break the entire continuity of the entire franchise with the Holdo maneuver, which, don't get me wrong, was absolutely cool, stunning visually. The physics were cool, except the problem is it doesn't work because that's not how light speed works in Star Wars, because if it was, there'd be no reason to have these massively complex world-ending devices. You just take an old cruiser, load it up with a bunch of lead, and just have a droid fly it into a planet at light speed.
Yep, that would do it.
Just destroy the planet. That's all you'd have to do. It's like
that would do it.
No,
it would be real easy to destroy a planet if you could do that. You could just fly a ship into something at light speed. That would destroy anything.
You don't have a Superstar destroyer. Why? Just take an A-wing with a droid pilot and have it enter hyperspace, or have it go to make the jump to light speed like a few kilometers off the bow, and it'll destroy the whole thing. Send 2 if you want to be careful about. Like, every battle in Star Wars makes no sense now. Not one. Build a hyperspace missile. That's all you got to do. Like,
That's all you gotta do.
No part of it. No part of this entire series makes sense anymore if you can just have a ship make the jump to light speed and destroy absolutely every freaking thing because you're trying to apply real physics to it. Nothing works anymore. Nothing works. They had to break. They destroyed the entire franchise so they could have a purple-haired lesbian tell a cis white man, Poe Dameron, that he sucks because he's a cis white man. That's all that was. That's the entire message of the story.
They sacrificed physics for the sake of that story, man.
All of it. And the problem, like Rose was hated because she's a bad character. Here's the problem. I like the actress. I'll fix that movie right now. And I'll even keep the major plot beats of Rey is off learning with Luke. And the Empire is now can track ships, and they are chasing after the rebels for the B plot. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I will save this in 5 minutes. Ready? Here we go. Yes, Rey is off learning from Luke. You can even say that Luke has disconnected himself. Whatever. That plot literally can stay the same. Here's the thing. They are tracked through hyperspace, but they don't know how. In fact, Holdo can say, "We don't know how we were tracked. We think we have a spy on board. Dameron, I need you. We have a plan, but I can't tell anyone what that plan is because otherwise, the traitor could tell the First Order because clearly they're in communications with her. They couldn't track us through hyperspace. There is something going on. Someone told them where it is. Reveal it's Rose. Because as far as Rose is concerned, the entire reason her planet of Cantobite or whatever, the whole mineral thing, and it's like that her planet was destroyed and her people were enslaved by the First Order. And the reason the First Order the reason she sided with them is because she doesn't see the First Order as the problem. She sees the actual Republic as the problem. Because if the Republic had actually cared for the people in the Outer Rim like they said they were, they would have protected them from the First Order. In fact, the First Order wouldn't exist because the entire point of the First Order is that they're trying to bring justice and security. Under the Empire, whether we like it or not, it was a more stable, more prosperous economy.
Yeah.
That is absolutely everywhere. Like, people had jobs. There was a reason people were signing up to fight to be stormtroopers. There was a reason for this. And the Republic didn't make things better. They made them worse economically for a lot of people, except for the inner core planets, which were already wealthy. It's like, you didn't care about us poor farmers and miners on the outer rim. You only cared about the core worlds where you already had the money to begin with.
Now you got political intrigue.
Exactly. You got political intrigue. Don't do Cantobite at all. Have Finn is sent off on a desperate mission with Rose, because Rose is trying to get back to them because she thinks she's found out what the plan is. So the reason Rose is like, we need to get off the ship and let's go save some people. Let's go to this planet. Poe agrees with it. And so Poe goes with them. Right.
Mm-hmm.
They get to the planet. Oh no, the planet is literally part of the First Order. She lied to them. That's the big reveal, that she's the traitor. Finn ends up leading a revolt amongst the stormtroopers because he's like, hey, I'm one of you. You don't have to do this. You were forced to do this. And he even turns Rose. They lead the rebellion. Phasma's there. That's where you can have their fight. They show up to save everything. Rey shows up to face off against Kylo Ren. That's his name. To face off against Kylo Ren. You have the scene. They kill Snoke. They explain who Snoke is. Just tell us who he is. He's not some freak. He was a backup plan. But Rey, I would even say Rey turns, but Kylo actually decides to be good, or Kylo does become the Emperor now, and he's gone full evil. Rey escapes. End of movie. Luke Skywalker survives, or this is how you kill Luke. You still have that fight at the end, right? But Luke goes with Rey, and he's part of that fight, and he goes up against Kylo Ren, and then just before, he can't bring himself to kill Kylo. He just can't. He's like, I know I need to kill you, but I can't kill you. You are my nephew. I love you too much. There is still good in you. Kylo kills Luke. Or Kylo or Luke and Rey are escaping, but they realize it's too much. So Luke uses his powers, and you still have the thing where he uses so much of his power that he dies. Right. And then but either way, you can still kill Luke off in that second film. You still have the plot beat of Rose and Finn building a relationship, but Rose is a traitor, and this makes the eventual escape of the Resistance not only possible, but now they've built up they have an army, and they can start going toe to toe because they've taken ships and all this other material from the First Order, and that sets up the third film where Kylo spends the next few years. We say it's several years later, but he's been building up there was always a fleet being built up, and now they've got the fleet, and they can destroy planets. Let's keep that element to it. I still think that's stupid, but just say, look, it takes 4 or 5 Star Destroyers, but they can blow up a whole planet if they want. This is the most powerful fleet that's ever been formed, even though it's a few things, and that's your fight. End of story. All the main plot points are there. All the main characters that you can still keep Holdo, and just don't have Leia Mary Poppins herself back into that ship. That was just...
Oh, no. I mean, like, the third movie was just incompetently made. Overall. They had glaring plot holes. I'm like,
the entire movie's a plot hole. The entire movie's a plot hole. Because J.J. Abrams was trying to fix what the B... Okay, Star Wars works this way. There's an A plot and there's a B plot. The A plot is the overarching, is sort of the individual Skywalker, Jedi versus Sith storyline. These are the few characters that, that's your main character. Your Luke Skywalker, your Obi-Wan, your Anakin. That's what that story is. The B plot is the broader story. It's what's happening in the galaxy.
Mm-hmm.
Why are people doing what they're doing? And there's several years between each movie. There's supposed to be numerous years so they can go off and have other adventures and set up other things that you allude to in each film. So that you start off with a unique starting point and you can build from it. And they don't have any of that in these films. They don't understand the B plot. The second movie, which is why it's the worst of all the Star Wars movies, is that they don't understand the B plot, and the B plot ruined the third movie because J.J. Abrams tried to fix what he did. And again, like you said, the entire movie's incompetently made because J.J. Abrams should have taken the L, right, and say, okay, I can't do Finn the way I want, but I can do I can do it a little differently, right? But they still try to do the redemption arc for Kylo Ren. You don't give him a redemption arc unless the redemption arc is him sacrificing himself to destroy the fleet he designed. Right? Fine. You want to have him turn at the end and be like, okay, yeah, I understand what I've done wrong. Or you have something about how, again, he was clearly supposed to be in communication with Anakin Skywalker at some point. Like, just and
makes
somehow
sense.
Emperor Palpatine has returned. Just stop. Kathleen Kennedy, stop it.
Stop it, Kathleen.
Yeah. See, back to your point about how it's like, no one had, again, Rey and Finn were great characters. You wrote them poorly because you didn't give them the storyline that they should have deserved because you're so busy trying to you're so worried about making someone who may be a minority look bad or put them in a situation of learning, which is what every other character is supposed to do, that you set them up to fail. Luke Skywalker in the first movie was going to join the Empire. He screws up all the time. No one believed in him. Everyone's like, you're an idiot kid from some backwater planet. You ain't going to do jack. And yet, because Kathleen Kennedy's politics got in the way, you screwed up perfectly good characters. They're like, well, and what's worse is, do you remember how they were like, oh, hey, finally some minority characters to star in a major sci-fi franchise? And like every meme was Captain Janeway from Star Trek Voyager and Captain Sisko from DS9. And it's like, what are you talking about? These characters have been around since the 90s. Sigourney Weaver from Alien. Ripley from Alien. From the Alien franchise.
Yeah.
Stargate. Amanda Tapping. In Stargate SG-1. Teal'c from SG-1. You get to, it's like there was Farscape. They had, I can't remember her name.
What about all the Star Treks?
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It's like, DS9 and Voyager, those were Star Trek. Like, what are you talking about? Like, it's not new. Lando friggin' Calrissian and Leia from the original trilogy.
Yep.
Mace Windu. You're not covering new ground here, Kathleen, but they want to. It's like with what's her face? She was in the Hunger Games series. She was talking about how no one was she literally said this like a couple months ago. She said no one was really willing to take a chance on female-led action films until the Hunger Games. I heard this. Like, what are you smoking?
What about Aliens?
Again,
I was like, do you not watch movies?
Claudia Christensen from the Babylon 5 series. Again, particularly for sci-fi, there's women all over it. There are beloved black characters all over sci-fi. Action films. Laura friggin' Croft. I'm sorry. There's all kinds of women, black, find a minority, they're heroes in major franchises. But Kathleen, this goes, and this is a conversation I know that we're going to have in the future when we go into that specifically for another episode. But it's Kathleen. We are literally 20 years into the 21st century. It is not 1963. You are not making Who's Coming to Dinner. You do not have Sidney Poitier breaking ground. It's not 1960. It's not 1965, and William Shatner kissing Uhura is not going to be not some big thing. It's not even the early 90s. It's not with White Men Can't Jump. I'm sorry. We're 20 years into the 21st century. Stop it. You want credit for crap you didn't create. You're not some big groundbreaker. What you're trying to do is make yourself, you're LARPing as an activist. That's all you're doing. You are LARPing as an activist. That's it. And you're ruining this beloved franchise by doing it. You screwed up Han Solo. Everyone loved Rogue One because it was good, because she was a compelling character.
You saw that last episode of Mandalorian. I heard it was pretty bad. You could tell it was like, oh, Kathleen Kennedy just decided to show up and ruin this show too now, huh?
It's pretty obvious that she had a much heavier hand in this one. It wasn't as bad as it could have been, but the problem is everything's sort of earned in it, but it was very clear that she had her hand in this pie, and she was not letting Favreau do what he wanted to do. That is absolutely obvious from the entire third season.
Must have been a bummer.
It wasn't bad. Here's the thing. It wasn't as bad because we had some really good acting and a lot of the stuff was earned. There was enough high points that it doesn't kill it. But it is very clear that Favreau wasn't doing what he wanted to do entirely, and so he was trying to fill in. He was trying so hard. Again, hold on. Pre-Disney, Ahsoka from the Clone Wars is a beloved character. I'm sorry. Star Wars is filled with minority characters that are beloved by the fans. I mean, again, everyone talks about Picard. The fandom wants Cisco. They didn't want Picard. They wanted Cisco as a follow-up. Everyone wants to see. Everyone wanted DS9 season 8.
You know
like,
what?
I'm sorry, guys. Straight up.
You know what always
Kathleen
kind of
Kennedy's
bothered me though was the fact that finally see my first Asian dude in Star Wars, and he knows martial arts. So I'm like, oh man, that feels racist as hell.
Well,
you've stereotyped us.
Well, but look at who he is, right? They can't make him a Jedi, but look at who he is. You know, it's like
they had Donnie Yen in Rogue One. He knew martial arts, but he wasn't a Jedi. I don't know. Yeah. Honestly, I felt like that was a slap in my face.
What should have been a slap in your face is that the first Asian character was actually
that girl. Yeah.
No. Well, no. Although yes, but no. I was actually what's his name? Nub from Return of the Jedi. His co-pilot.
Yeah.
That one should be.
He was truly the first Asian in Star Wars.
Yeah, he was the first Asian. Although yes,
he was the first Asian.
The way they played Rose is not.
And well, we all know who the first Jamaican in Star Wars was.
Seriously, he is the worst part of that film. If they should have committed to the idea that he was actually a Sith, I think that would have redeemed him in the second movie. If they had kept with the idea that he was actually a Sith who was manipulating things the whole time, like he was sort of Palpatine's helper the entire time, like this whole thing was a setup.
Either that or have him die horribly and hilariously.
Either's good.
That would be
But it's
that would
clear
have redeemed it.
They a lot of people have gone back and pointed out, if you watch some of the things that happened in that first movie in the background, it is clear he's actively manipulating things.
Yeah.
He's high, and so that would have, imagine, because he, in many ways, he's the reverse of Yoda, because Yoda was right, because the way they played Yoda was, and Lucas talked about this. He's like, in good fiction or fantasy, there's always this helpless animal or character that you don't think can help you in any way, but you help him anyway. And in helping that character, you find out this is actually this is the fairy godmother, this is the whatever, and they help you. Jar Jar Binks, it's very clear, was supposed to be the reverse of that storyline. Yeah, he's seemingly the hapless character who's not supposed to help you, but you're a good guy, so you help him anyway. But instead of him being the fairy godmother or whatever, he turns out to be the villain of the story.
Yeah.
He's an agent of evil, and he was using his status because he knew that it would betray the heroes. It was clear he was supposed to be literally the anti-Yoda in this case. So it would have been amazing if he had been Plagueis, right? Some version of Plagueis, and he's like, yeah, I'm helping my pet. I'm helping my pet.
Yeah, I always kind of saw him as like the space version of Forrest Gump,
which is what they turned him into.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the worst part is like the problem is he didn't need to be that. Like, he was designed to be a toy, but of course the fandom hated him because it's such an unlikable character.
Yeah.
It doesn't work. Like, I'm sorry, the original Star Wars trilogy does not really. Well, what about the Ewoks? Well, people hate the Ewoks, but the Ewoks weren't incompetent. Like I said, they are terribly, really competent cannibals. And everyone's like, "What do you mean cannibals?"
Plus, the Ewoks were kind of cute too.
Right, they were right, but that's the thing, is they were courageous.
They were fuzzy.
They were competent. They were fuzzy little, because they were originally Wookiees in the original story. He just cut them in half and called them Ewoks. But think about it. When that Ewok jumps on the speeder bike, he doesn't make a bad move on it. He takes one look at it and says, I know how to use that. That is a terrifying level of intelligence. And think about it. They had clothes that fit Leia. Are any Ewoks Leia's size and shape? No. Do they wear clothes like that? No. Where do you think they got them? Well, let's see. What were they going to do with our heroes when they first found them? Oh, yeah, they were going to eat them. They are hyper intelligent, cannibal teddy bears.
That would be an idea for a movie. Evil Ewoks, like cannibal hunters.
Mm-hmm.
That would be kind of terrifying.
What do you think they did? What do you think they did with those with the heads that were in those helmets they were banging on at the end of the movie?
Yep, those helmets.
You know that everyone kind of left. They're like, okay, look, I know cultures are cultures, but eating the stormtroopers seems like that was weird. That was real.
Well,
weird.
it doesn't count as cannibalism because technically not the same species. So I guess it's okay.
I feel like we're mincing words to make them feel cuter. I'm just saying. And again, they go to Endor. Where were the friggin' Ewoks when on the in Rise of Skywalker? Just
it wouldn't have been politically correct to have actors of that stature, I guess.
Yep. CGI again, that whole film is a crime against humanity, and it's Kathleen Kennedy killed this franchise because she wants to LARP as an activist. That's all this is.
It was arrogance, hubris, being out of touch with the fan base, not having any respect for the source,
reality,
not having any respect for the source material whatsoever.
Yep.
Not even understanding how fandoms even work, really.
It's like if you really want to respect the source material, go find some other good movies and then copy those. That's what he did for the original series. Just saying, respect the source material. And again, it's hard to build this stuff from scratch. Lady, you got 30 years of material to pull from. 30 years. Get some competent writers and producers to go through that material and find the best elements and tell your story. It's not hard. Marvel did it for a decade before you showed up.
Yep. And with that, I think it's time that we conclude our show. How long have we been going on for?
An hour and 22 minutes.
Whoa. But yes, that was us talking about Star Wars. Do you think people were into this one?
I don't know. They're probably amazed at how much I care about Star Wars, my complaints about Star Wars. But again, the thing is, it's not that it really doesn't take it. Like, I do not stay up at night worrying about it. I don't. What I dislike is my thing is art matters. Art absolutely matters. Stories are how we move forward in any culture. Mm-hmm. You can judge a culture by the artwork it makes. And when it stops being art and becomes
Grand Admiral Thrawn said that.
Well, not originally, but yes, he would agree with that statement. The thing is, the reason I care is because when you see art take the turn that it has, it means the society is dying. These stories are the reason for science fiction and all of these things is it's supposed to be the thing that conveys our morals to the next generation. It is supposed to be Spider-Man, Superman, Luke Skywalker. All these characters are supposed to be the thing that says, this is how you live your life. You take care of the weak. You are brave when things go bad. Right? They discussed this in The Lord of the Rings. Tolkien was real keen on this, saying the old stories matter because they give you strength in real life. Because we all have dragons in our world to fight. These stories are supposed to be things that we can show to children and enjoy them with our children and say, this is how you live your life. These are the stories. Because it's like, oh, you shouldn't get your morality from the story. All of your morality comes from stories. Because the stories show you how morality is played out. There is a reason the bulk of the Bible is made up of stories. I'm not saying the stories didn't happen. I do think they happened. But my point is there's a reason they're told as stories and not just simply as Here's your list of do's and don'ts. God knows how we think and why we need story. Art is important for the development of any society and of any individual human. When you destroy art, you destroy humanity. That's why I care.
And that's why, Jason McLean, I'm going to be the first one to tell you that on behalf of K-pop, you're welcome for saving art. You're welcome, my friend. Don't worry, K-pop is here. We'll take care of the music industry. Don't worry.
You do that. You do that.
Art is in good hands.
There's some good stuff coming out of Korea, man. It's not just the K-pop. There's a lot of good stuff. We can talk about that in the future too.
Oh yeah, we'll do a K-pop discussion. I got things to say.
Well, I know you.
But yeah, if you're still with us tonight, folks, thank you very much for chiming in as Jason and I discuss our true thoughts and feelings on Star Wars. And yeah, I guess we'll see you next time. I'm really bad at like these endings.
You really are.
I really suck at this.